Under the cold winter waters of the floodpans of South Africa lurks a dangerous secret. A spectacular survivor that has outlived the dinosaurs, the Nile crocodile. Masters of these waters, once feared and hunted, now they live on, revered and protected, playing out the rites they have practiced for 160 million years. This is the story of the youngest, mature female of the pack, in her first year of motherhood. Caring for her young with unexpected tenderness. Raising them, in time to become animals so powerful that the ancient Egyptians believed them divine. In the chill air of the subtropical floodplains of Ndumo, the lives of the resident crocodiles are much harder than those of their counterparts nearer the equator. Here, these cold-blooded creatures must find ways to survive temperatures that drop to 8 degrees Celsius, only a few degrees higher than the limit that would cause their death. The wildlife sanctuary of Ndumo lies just south of South Africa's border to Mozambique and east of Swaziland. Two rivers join here, the Usutu and the Pongola. When flooded, each river feeds a number of shallow lakes or pans. The inhabitants of this subtropical wildlife sanctuary find comfort in the waters of the pans. Waters that may be even 5 degrees warmer than the running rivers, summer habitat for the Ndumo crocodiles. 800 resident crocodiles depend on their surroundings to maintain the right temperature. Sunbathing is survival, and survival in this wilderness is a struggle that begins even before they hatch. From their first breath, newborn crocodiles are at the mercy of hidden dangers. Camouflage and luck are their defenses. Only a few will live to see out their first year. At just 1 day old, the 120-gram featherweights are pocket versions of their parents, having inherited their looks as well as their fearlessness. But the quarter-meter-long hunters have a lot to learn. At this age, despite their predatory instincts, the miniature marauders are at their most vulnerable, easy meat for several predators. Only 2% of the brood will make it to adulthood. So, for our female to have reached the age of 12 and a length of 2.5 meters is already a triumph. Soon the time will come for her to pass on her genes, so her offspring can repeat the cycle successfully. If in turn they reach adulthood, their reward will be enormous. They too will become river gods of Ndumo. It's June, winter in the southern hemisphere. The river has almost dried up and the local crocodile population has moved to the large pan called Nyamiti. They share their winter habitat with hippos, these creatures play an important role in the waters of Ndumo. Their comings and goings keep the feeder channels between the pans and the rivers clear, preventing them from silting up. The expanses of water draw other residents of the reserve. Along with the others, our young female suns herself on the sandy banks by day, soaking up as much heat as she can. Like all reptiles, the cold-blooded crocodiles use their environment to regulate their temperature. In the local winter conditions of July and August, they try desperately to keep their bodies above 18 degrees. Too cold, and they can't digest food. Starved of heat, their growth suffers. Although the Ndumo crocs are smaller than their northern cousins, they still enjoy all the benefits of a highly advanced design. Their scaly skin is more than armor. It's watertight, preventing them from dehydrating in the sun. Clawed feet help them climb steep riverbanks. Special glands on their tongue allow crocs to live in fresh or salt water. But it is in the water that their remarkable design shows its full advantages. When all else is out of sight, their acute ears and sharp eyes remain above the waterline, together with their sensitive nose. They propel themselves through the water with their powerful tails, steering with their webbed hind feet. When they travel underwater, they can still see clearly through their transparent third eyelid. At night, as the air cools, they have learned to retain their body heat by sinking to the bottom of the pan, where the water is as much as 5 degrees warmer than at the surface. Here they lie motionless, slowing their hearts down to an astonishing 3 or 4 beats a minute. A trick which helps them to stay underwater for up to 3 hours at a time, coming up only then to breathe. For the African spoonbills and migrant birds that visit the Nyamiti Pan, this area is such a rich source of food that it attracts more than 120 wetland species. 35 of these alone are endangered, making Ndumo a site of international importance. Unperturbed by a sleeping crocodile, this stork uses its wings to minimize reflections on the water surface, thereby creating a better view into the water. In the tropics, Nile crocodiles differ not just in size, but in their lifestyles. Warmer temperatures allow them to breed all the year round. Here, southern African winters force the crocodiles into their own stringent breeding cycle, an annual event that begins with the onset of spring. In September, when the temperature reaches the mid-20s Celsius, the crocodiles shed their lethargy and leave the pans. They follow the feeder channels forged anew by the floods and make for the Pongola River, where food is abundant. As the males reach the main river, they stake their claims. They're after a site where they will carry out their mating. They will defend this territory against all comers, both in the water and on the river banks. This male wanders into a danger zone, invading the territory of the dominant male, who won't hesitate to assert his claim. And once the intruder is off his land, he chases him out of sight, beyond the boundary of his domain. Our young female swims along the river, surveying the males to see which will make the best mate. She faces stiff competition from the other 60 female adults, each vying for one of about 10 potential mates. When the territories are established, a dominant male begins his courtship display. His water-slapping, bubble-blowing, and sounds too low for human ears make the water dance. Slowly he resurfaces, evaluating interest. Several would-be partners enter his territory, our young female among them. She's setting her sights on the highest prize. He is the largest and strongest male on this stretch of the river, while she is the smallest of the mature females. He may cover her as an afterthought, or worse, ignore her. For her, to mate with him would bring a rich reward. Her offspring would have the best genes available. Reptiles are often thought of as cold-blooded, not warm-hearted, yet the amorous female crocodiles caress the big male with great gentleness. This stimulates 2 glands under their jaws, releasing a scent that arouses him further. One by one they show their eagerness by lifting their heads and sinking beneath him. He chooses 5 or 6 and pairs with them in a tender act lasting up to an hour each time. Male and female lie in the river shallows, tails entwined. Our young female is the last in line. Untiringly, she watches as her competitors couple. 2 weeks later, her turn finally comes. For the first time in her life, she mates. But being last may have fatal consequences for her young in the days ahead. She will always be one precarious step behind the others. She will get what they reject. For the next 4 months, while her eggs develop, she must eat well to build up her stores of fat. For the 5 months after that, while she protects her nest and then her young, she will not eat. It is not by chance that the crocodiles mate at this time of year. Nature is about to take a hand. In October, the first storms of summer flood the pan. As the water subsides and drains into the main river, the crocodiles gather in the feeder channels for the greatest feast of the year. Driven by the urge to spawn, thousands of red-breasted breams swim against the current towards the pan. The persistent crocs wait for hours for the fish to slip backwards into their mouths, or give them a smart sideswipe. Then, because they cannot chew, they bite and soften the prey before gulping it down to be ground by pebbles that they've swallowed. The ones that get away meet other anglers lined up on the riverbank. The hammerkops aren't mere spectators. They have their eyes on smaller fish. Our young female chooses her spot, only to be pushed away by the dominant male. He wants this pitch for his favorite fishing technique, submerging to lie on the bed of the channel, below the rapids, where the fish gather before making the big leap upstream. Again, perseverance will be rewarded. Lying still, mouth open, he waits for a fish to get close enough for a bite. Then he must surface. A flap at the back of his throat prevents water flooding his lungs and stomach. He needs his jaws in the air to be able to swallow. An older female has a different technique. She forms a living barrier in the fish's path. Her method pays off best. In a remarkable display of cooperation, several crocodiles force the fish to run an almost inescapable gauntlet. Even the bream that elude the front row land in harm's way. The fishing goes on for weeks. The rich catch will sustain the females through the long haul of guarding their nests and the early weeks of looking after their young. At the end of the floods, the well-fed crocs return to the Pongola River. It's now late November, 4 months since our young female mated. Heavily pregnant, she makes her way to the ancestral nesting sites. She needs to find a place well above the high water mark, which will not flood in heavy rains or if the water rises. Once again, she is last in line. The larger females have already commandeered the best sites. Just looking for one is fraught with danger. Even her attempt to pass between two nests sparks a clash between neighbors. She faces her elder's anger whenever she is too near. It is late in the afternoon when she finally finds a space, but it is close to the river. If more floods come, her entire clutch risks drowning. As a first-time mother, she has no choice but to take this gamble. She begins the process of egg-laying by sweeping the sand with her jaw, testing the soil and marking the territory with her scent glands. Instinctively, she knows that she will produce a healthy clutch only if the nest is sufficiently warm and moist. The temperature within will determine the hatchling sex. Ideally, there should be a 50-50 mix. Below 30 degrees, they will be female. Above 32 degrees, male. It's critical that she gets it right. Just 2 degrees hotter, and they'll all be spoilt. Only when she's satisfied does she begin to dig. Carefully, she hollows out an incubation chamber, a pit less than half a meter deep, a laborious task that will go on into the night. As she lays, she sinks into a trance. For the next 2 hours, she and the future she bears are at their most vulnerable. The strong muscles of her tail and pelvis support her over the cavity. She breathes in. As she breathes out, she contracts her stomach muscles, and the eggs are pushed out 1 or 2 at a time. As she delivers the last of her 30-odd eggs, she comes round from her daze. She begins to cover them up. She tamps the soil down around the eggs to fill in any air spaces, lessening the chances of damp rotting them. This is a long and delicate process. Dawn sees her lonely 3-month vigil on the nest begin, prepared to resist any threat. On guard at all times. 3 months without a mouthful of food. She guards the eggs constantly, week in, week out. The croc mothers shelter their nests, preventing their getting too wet in the rain and too hot from the sun. They lie mouths agape to stop themselves from overheating as the temperature soars to 40 degrees Celsius. But when the heat is unbearable, even the most attentive mother must take to the water to drink and cool down. And her absence doesn't go unnoticed. There are plenty of opportunists about. The baboons have returned, and so has a water monitor. Wearily, the baboons cross the river, but they are too prudent to take advantage of the unprotected nest. With the commotion caused by the primates, the water monitor seizes its chance to plunder the nest. The neighborhood watch notices the theft, a pair of Dekop parents. Their own nest is on the ground nearby. They call out, and the monitor flees. Now that the alarm has been given, it can't afford to risk the mother's return. A water mongoose is stealthier and more determined. These egg lovers are responsible for the greatest number of losses. Together, baboons, birds, monitors and mongooses see to it that half of the young mother's eggs will never hatch. But they're not the only threat. Africa's unpredictable weather may cause the eggs to drown or rot. Extreme temperatures may dry them up and continuously send the mothers back to the water, leaving the nests open to scavengers. Meanwhile, the big male polices his stretch of river and demands respect from the females. They submit to him by lifting their heads above water. When squabbles break out, he soon intervenes. The cool water is the only respite for the mothers baking in the fierce sun. But their trips to and fro force them to breach each other's boundaries. Warnings escalate through hisses to growls. But if the warnings are ignored, the 150-kilogram combatants join battle. "16 brooding females cram themselves into this small grove. From 50-year-old matriarchs 3.5 meters long down to our 2.5-meter 12-year-old. At least our young female's undesirable residence is close to the water, where peace generally reigns. Another mother feels bold enough to take her offspring on an outing, treading cautiously among the jaws of death. Luckily, the brooding crocodile's appetites are temporarily suspended and ignore the moorhen family. Yet at other times, even birds can provide a good meal. The weeks draw on. 3 months later, on her return from yet another trip to cool down, our young croc mother senses that something is different. A muffled croaking comes from the earthen womb. Instinctively, she starts to dig. The calls grow more insistent. Deftly, she scrapes the earth away to expose the first hatchling. The cries of the first to emerge stimulate the rest to break through their shells. Then tragedy strikes. As she seizes one of the young, she snaps her jaws and kills it. Has her inexperience betrayed her, or is her urge to kill too strong? She's more cautious in picking up the others. Even after her 3-month fast, she is guided by her maternal instinct and does not swallow her brood. Her lower jaw has a pouch where they can lie in safety. When it's full of 12 or so hatchlings, the new mother makes her way to the water. She searches for a nursery screened by hanging grasses, where the defenseless young will be safe from attack. Once more, she is last in line. The good spots are already taken and well guarded. She's forced to move downriver, further from her nest. At last, she finds a suitable area. Softly, she floats her brood out from her jaws. She must hurry back to the others. Whilst she's away, they are at risk of attack. Predators could be waiting in the surrounding vegetation or flying overhead. Female is quick to spot the danger, and the fish eagle misses its chance. Crocodile mothers make a series of round trips to retrieve their hatchlings. Jaws that can exert a crushing force of several tons are used like tweezers. Last of all, our female adroitly gathers the eggs still unopened. Skillfully, she cracks the shell. Then she rolls the egg back in her mouth to release the tiny crocodile. Carefully, she carries them back to the river to free them in the nursery. Ready to submerge for safety, the young crocs lounge on their attentive sunbed. Hidden in the reeds, Mother keeps an eye on her brood while they hunt for the first time. Already they practice ambushes, lying concealed until they attack. Insects now will give way to larger prey later. They will soon exhaust the food near the nursery. One by one, they will have to leave to look for richer hunting grounds. By 2 months old, the young are off to fend for themselves, abandoning their mother. She is free at last to find food. It's 5 months since she ate. In East Africa, where crocodiles feed on larger prey such as antelopes, they often go 6 months between meals. And nowhere is this pattern more typical than in the Serengeti. Twice a year in February and July, great assemblies of migrating wildebeest reach the banks of the Grumeti River to quench their thirst. Here the large crocs know they have only these 2 chances to feed, and they don't hesitate to snatch at any opportunity. The Nile crocodiles use the strengths of their design to the full. They make their final approach unseen. They go for the young and inexperienced, which have probably never seen a crocodile before. Blinded by thirst, the wildebeest return to drink. Rather than bite their victims to death, they drag them below the surface to drown. They have just 2 weeks in which to gorge. They must eat enough to keep them alive until the herds pass again in 6 months' time. Once their catch has drowned, the crocodiles feed in a unique way among reptiles. As they are not able to anchor the wildebeest in the water or to bite off mouthfuls, they cooperate and share the kill. While some brace the carcass, others grab hold of a section, twisting and spinning to tear it off. These images have earned the crocodiles their fearsome reputation. During this short feeding spell, they kill more than they can eat. The discarded corpses, however, do not go to waste. Downstream wait those crocodiles that are too small to bring down a wildebeest themselves. They will dispose of any leftovers. Indeed, scavenging crocodiles are efficient cleaners of Africa's waterways, and there are always smaller assistants like the marabou stork to gather up any crumbs that remain. Back at Ndumo, the hungry female finds conditions far less favorable. The antelope are fewer and far more wary. Their thirst is not sufficient to blind them to danger. She has little chance of taking one by surprise. She can only watch in frustration before turning to the water itself. Below are large barbel catfish. It takes patience to catch them. Left to themselves, the catfish would exterminate all the other fish species here. Without crocodiles, many of Africa's pans and rivers would lose much of their species diversity. The young crocs too have made a catch. They are dismembering a bird. Even this tiny, they share the meat like a full-grown pack. For this year's offspring, the early months on their own are a series of close encounters. They are only too eager to investigate a green water snake. But not all the species they bump into are so harmless. Only a lucky few survive their first solo sorties. And everyday occurrences can have an unexpected outcome. They are at the mercy of a new and unanticipated predator. The most assiduous of all reptile parents now turn on them like cannibals. Mysteriously, one young croc gets a reprieve. Perhaps this female recognizes it as one of her own. As they approach a year old, life in the river becomes too dangerous. To escape their elders, the 70-centimeter juveniles flee to smaller pans nearby. They will spend the next 3 years here, gathering their strength in the clearer waters filtered by dense reed beds. Only when they reach 1.5 meters long will they be big and fast enough to escape the adults. Of the 30 youngsters who hatched, a mere handful has made it this far. Perhaps only one of this brood will reach adulthood at Ndumo. If it survives the early years, it may live to be 100 and end up as heavy as 4 sumo wrestlers. Crocodiles have one of the biggest weight increase ratios in the animal world, tipping the scales at 6,000 times their weight at birth. But should the survivor of the brood stray into neighboring Mozambique or Swaziland, its size will be no protection against two-legged predators, poachers. So Ndumo offers wildlife a vital sanctuary, but not just for the crocodiles. It's a year-long haven for all the endangered birds, mammals and fish that breed and find shelter in these wetlands. It's late May. Once more the cool breath of autumn scars the land. The crocs register the changes. As the level of the river falls, it's time for the larger residents to leave the Pongola and return to the comfort of their winter quarters, the Nyamiti Pan. Its balmy shadows will protect them from the chill clutches of the approaching winter. Our young female is among them. She has managed to live out her first year of motherhood unscathed. This time, she was last in line, and her young ones paid the price. The few survivors barely beat the odds. Ahead lie other years. Older, larger, and more experienced, she will evolve into a formidable guardian of future generations. Wise and protective, she will have earned her place among the African river gods.